Hello everyone. In this video, we're going to talk about adding and subtracting when it comes to significant figures. I did a video on how to identify significant figures and how to round significant figures. Please watch those videos because we are going to be using those concepts in this video. Let's begin. The one rule that you need to know when it comes to adding and subtracting significant figures states use the number with the least amount of decimal places as your final answer and as a reference as to which number to round to. The best way to illustrate this is to go over a few examples so you can see for yourself. In example 1, we're adding 3.52 plus 2.2 plus 0.59, and that should give you 6.31 if you solve it normally. Now, when we take into account significant figures and we apply the rule, it says use the number with the least amount of decimal places. So what does that mean? Okay, so in here we're adding 3.52 plus 2.2 plus 0.59. What the rule is talking about is how many decimal places does each number have? Let's do it one by one. So here from the decimal point, we have 1, 2. So this number has 2 decimal places. Now here we have 1. So this has 1 decimal place. Here we have 1, 2. So this one has 2 decimal places. The rule says use the one with the least amount of decimal places. So we have 2, we have 1, and we have 2. The one with the least amount of decimal places is the 2.2. That means we have to round our final answer, which is 6.31, to 1 decimal place because that's the least amount of decimal places in this whole addition problem. So how do we do that? So here's our 1 decimal place that we need to use. And when it comes to rounding, you look at the number next to it to see if this number, the 3, stays as is or it rounds up. The rule says if it's 5 or greater, it moves up. If it's less than 5, it stays the same. Since the 1 is less than 5, the 3 stays the same. So our final answer will be 6.3. Let's move on to the next problem or the next example. So the first step is to solve it as you would normally solve any other subtraction or addition problem. You can use your calculator, plug it in, or solve it yourself. So 10.11 minus 3.6 should give you 6.51. Now the rule says round your final answer to the least amount of decimal places. Here we have 1, 2. So this number has 2 decimal places. This has 1. Remember, we're looking at how many decimal places are after the decimal. So this has 1. And we're supposed to use the least of the 2. So in this case, 1. So our final answer should be rounded off to 1 decimal place. And how do we do that? We keep the 6, we keep the decimal, and we have the 5, which is this 5 right here. And to see if it goes up or down, we look at the number next to it, which is a 1, which means it stays the same. So our final answer is 6.1. I mean 6.5. We get rid of the 1. Let's move on to the next example. And we apply the same procedure. And the more and more you do this, the easier it will get. So let's add 0.9 plus 0.08 plus 0.6, and you should get 1.58. The rule is the same for addition and subtraction. So here we have 1 decimal place, so that's 1. Here we have 1, 2 decimal places, so this has 2 decimal places. This has 1. We are supposed to use the least of all the additions or subtractions. So in this case, we have 2 ones. So we're going to use 1. We're going to round our final answer to 1 decimal place. So in order to do that this is our 1 decimal place. We look at the number next to it. It's a 8. That means that the 5 gets rounded up to a 6. So our final answer will be 1.6. And here we have 1 decimal place, which is the least of all 3 of these as far as decimal places. Let's move on to the next problem. Here we have a combination of addition and subtraction. The procedure is the same. Just solve the problem, plug it into your calculator or do it by hand, and you should get 3.473. Now we go to each number that's added and subtracted, and we count how many decimal places it has from the first decimal. So here we have 1, 2, 3. This number has 3 decimal places. This next number has 1, 2. So this has 2 decimal places. Next number has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 decimal places. And this last number has 1, 2, 3. 3 decimal places. And the rule says to use the least of all 3 of them. So this wins. This is the least decimal. This is the number with the least decimal places. So our final answer needs to be rounded to 2 decimal places. As you can see, it's not always 1 decimal place. It's whatever the least decimal place from the problem is. In this case, 2 decimal places. So we keep the 3. This is our first decimal, and this is our second decimal place. So we're gonna keep the 4. And to see if we keep the 7 or it goes up, we look at the next number because we're gonna round to 2 decimal places. The 3 is less than 5, so the 7 stays. And our final answer is 3.47. If this video helped you out, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.